Hi, everyone, and welcome to a conversation about artificial intelligence for ESG goals and reporting. My name is Viktoria Lindback. I'm the product marketing manager at Picterra, and I'm joined today by my colleague Pascal. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for giving the opportunity. My name is Pascal. I'm VP of Sales here at Picterra.
So I'm really curious. You're talking to clients and prospects all day. What are some of the challenges that you see are facing consumer products companies today when it comes to ESG reporting?
Yeah, that's a very broad question, and why I say that is because every type of company will have or want to achieve the goals they set for 2030 or 2040, whatever the timeline is, and then different type of ESG achievements that they wanted to work towards. So, to give you an example, when you are more in the consumer products related to cocoa, you can imagine this has all to do with sustainable supply chain. But when you're a company that is using a lot of palm oil in the products and not necessarily directly a coffee or cocoa related product, then still you might want to make sure that your palm oil you're using is also coming from a area where there's no deforestation happening. So, and then there's much more to it, right? It's not only supply chain; it's also farmer practices. It's about carbon reduction. It's about environmental impact in general with the different stakeholders in your supply chain, so farmers, traders, shipping, and everything. And this already, I think, is answering your question. Is like there are a couple of there are a lot of items or topics that you want to tackle as a company, and now the question is, how are you going to do this? And then more importantly, how are you going to prove it?
Right, but there are other industries than consumer products, right, that are dealing with these types of issues.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not only consumer products. It's basically, I would say, across industry. Think about larger energy oil companies that want to reduce their footprint, and therefore, for example, work towards carbon credits milestones. So how can they make sure that they plant new forests in areas like New Zealand and Australia to make sure that they are have enough carbon credits towards their carbon reduction they need to prove and improve.
So then how would geospatial AI help them actually achieve higher transparency or be able to create digital records that show their progress on ESG targets? What's the connection to AI?
Yeah, as you mentioned, right? So new data sources like satellite, aerial, and drone imagery can help organizations that struggle to prove their ESG initiatives. And I think that's the important part, right? So how to prove? There's a lot of talking and there's a lot of things already happening in a good way. But the most important part is how do you prove it? And then when you have those images, again, satellite, area, or drone images, how do you create insights from this imagery that basically is tackling or provide the accurate reports for auditing purposes or even for branding or marketing purposes. So how will AI help? Obviously, is to help that part of providing insights on those imagery, and obviously a platform as Picterra can help you to work towards that.
And what kind of objects are clients looking for when they're analyzing their images?
Yeah, so obviously the majority is related to forest. But then forest is also a broad topic. Because do you want to do deforestation monitoring, or these days what we're talking about more is actually reforestation. And then reforestation obviously cannot done just simply by satellite imagery. You want to do seedling counting. You want to make sure that those seeds are planted to the forest, and you want to do forest mapping management. So in other words, making sure that the forests are growing, that you take out the portion that are basically destroyed because of weather occurrence that's happening a lot. So it's the forest part is a majority that we're talking to. But think about it when you are also looking into supply chain, that you want to tackle things like biodiversity. So do we have enough shadow trees? Is there an alternative crop that farmers are growing that could help the farmer income to increase? Or think about child labor or anything that is more social economic related is like, are there hospitals near the locations where the farms are? Is there transportation? So there's a lot of other things on the imagery while you have the image anyways, where we can help companies to detect more than just the crop or the forest.
Yeah, so I guess it's not just aiding with the environmental part of ESG, but also the social and governance portions in that way.
Yeah.
Okay, and I see here you pulled up one of our ESG demos, so maybe you can talk a little bit about what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so this is a typical report that can be provided towards our clients, and this is actually from a scenario that we're looking at tree cover loss. Now, again, this is really focused on within the supply chain, and take again the critical ones like mining and palm oil, but also, for example, fisheries. What's happening a lot is that forests are cut illegally. Why? Because that land could be used actually to grow palm trees, or think about livestock that will give them area to look at where new livestock is basically brought to. So what you want to do in the supply chain in your area and sometimes it doesn't even need to be directly connected to a farm there, but if you know that you are getting a crop out of, for example, in part of Indonesia, you want to monitor that part yourself. And what you see here is basically what we've identified is time over change. So in other words, how was the forest? What was the area of the forest in a certain time period? And then look at change. So what you can see here is that we've identified the area of interest. So what is the area that we want to monitor and making sure that there's no deforestation happening? And as you can see, we're using satellite imagery. And when I'm sliding the bar, it really shows you the effect of what's happening in that area. And it also gives you alert. So sliding the bar will give you, and as you can see clearly, like the density of the forest, the difference, right, at this area. So this really proves that deforestation is happening at that area. Therefore, you can take action. You can educate the farmers, or you can say, listen, from the supply chain part, I don't want any raw materials delivered anymore into my channels because deforestation happening and is against the agreements that we made within that partnership. So again, what we're doing here, area of interest over a certain time period, we show you what's happening from the density of the forest, and again, this will show you the impact. So this is a very basic example that we can do. Obviously, we can do way more, as I mentioned. You can also think about, again, other objects that you want to look at, water bodies or land cover chains, or, as I mentioned, more constructional things like hospitals and other areas that you want to, or objects that you want to look at.
Cool, and I'll put a link to this demo for all the viewers. They can take a look at it afterwards. I'll put it in the comments. Okay, so you mentioned that we are working with coffee brands, carbon credit farmers, and so on. What other types of clients would you advise reaching out to talk about their using machine learning for these purposes? Like, at what stage of a company's journey should they be thinking about proving this?
Yes. So as I mentioned, right? So it's companies that are particularly struggling to prove their ESG initiatives in a way like this, right? So it could also be, as I mentioned, for tree planting. How do you really prove that you have those carbon credits? And there's a lot of auditing happening right now where local government will say, okay, you need to prove that you've planted so many seedlings, or you need to prove that you have been growing your forest, and therefore you will get the validation and accreditation to get credits. So to answer your question, like, when is it interesting for companies to reach out to us, are particularly related to, okay, how do you process machine learning on top of your imagery? So with our platform, you don't need to code. You can focus on the area that you want to work with. The only thing what we ask you to do is help us to understand what you want to look at. So annotating, for example, the trees or the forest, and start monitoring that. But also think that at scale, right? So this is just a small area that we're looking at, but you can imagine that you want to do this over all of your plantations in Latin America, right? Or you want to do a amount of hectare forest monitoring in New Zealand, what we're, for example, doing with a project right now, carbon forest farming related, is where this tool can help you to scale and deliver your clients' reports in a quick time turnover. So no coding needed, no understanding of machine learning needed. Just have your images ready and start annotating and looking at what you want to look at, and then our platform will do the rest for you.
All right. Thanks, Pascal. I think with that, we can wrap it up, and I'll put our contact details in the comments as well. So you can feel free to reach out to us to talk more about using geospatial AI for ESG reporting. And yeah, I think we'll end it there. Thanks so much, Pascal.
You're welcome.